Hi, Jessie Nebulous here, and today we're going to be doing an oil pastel painting. As you can see, I have an outline, but I have used a kneaded eraser and rolled over it and picked up the extra graphite so that it's not mixing in with the oil pastels and getting all muddy and gross. So I'm starting off with a base layer of skin tone, trying my best to preserve the areas for the eyes and all of that. And my goal today is to not rely so much on the Gamsol for blending and to actually do some of my own blending. So you see I'm going to use a darker color here and then go back in with the lighter pastel and kind of blend it out that way. That's another blending technique instead of just relying entirely on the Gamsol. And it works quite well. And I actually get some fairly interesting details by doing it this way. Though since I end up going over all of my outlines with a black colored pencil, I lose a lot of the details, but that comes later. You know, regrets. You live and you learn, and then you get loves. But so far I'm liking what I'm doing. I didn't pick out a color scheme beforehand, which I usually do. I wanted to just go in a little bit more intuitive with it to see what I could come up with. And I end up liking the colors that I pick. As you can see, I'm making sure to get some shadow where the flowers are in the hair to add a touch of realism. Pardon me. Had a little something in my throat. It might take me with it. And I like to add a little bit of realism, especially with like shadows, even if I'm not doing a very real, even if I'm doing something very stylized like this is. If you add in just little shots of realism, like with the shadows, it really elevates your work. And I'm going in, defining the lips a little bit. I'll further define them later with some colored pencil. And you can occasionally see my head popping into frame. I usually stage my shot fairly well and you don't see my head. But today you see bits of my big pink head, so apologies for that, but nothing that can be done about it now. Nothing to be done. So one thing that I'm doing, you can see, is I am making sure to clean off my pastels in between uses, and so, because, you know, you get those little itsy bits. It's a very messy medium, but I am being careful to clean so that I'm not spreading pigment into areas I don't want it spread. So that's a good little tip for you. Still using a darker and then a lighter to blend. Getting some really good results that way. And my big old pink head. As you can see, I love pink. Even my hair is pink. It's one of my favorite things. But I'm trying to... every time I see my head, it's just going to make me giggle. I'm defining the flowers and getting my colors the way that I want them, mixing, even though I'm still going to use the Gamsol, which is odorless mineral spirits. I always want to say that wrong. That's what I'm pulling out now. You just need a tiny little bit on a brush, and you go over your oil pastel, and it blends it out super nicely. And you don't want too much on your brush. It's a very small amount is all you need. And as you can see, I left the eyes blank because I'm going to go back over with colored pencil, which it doesn't go well, but we'll get to that when we get to it. There's this thing when you are recording artwork, you're very aware that you're recording. So you have to make certain decisions that you wouldn't normally make. Like often when you're drawing, one thing that you do is you turn the paper or your sketchbook so that you can better make a line by following the natural curve of your arm. Well, if you're recording and you're doing a time lapse, you really can't do that, because if you're spinning your paper or your sketchbook in the middle of a video and a time lapse, it just looks god awful. It's just a spinny mess. So you really can't do that. So you have to try your best to just make your lines dead on without the benefit of moving the work around. which gets to be a bit of a problem coming up here when I get the colored pencils out. Because so far, I'm liking what's happening. I like, though everything is blending nicely, my big head's in the way, but everything's blending correctly. I like it. And everything's going according to plan. What vague plans I had. Because I didn't go into this piece with a whole lot of forethought. I just knew I had my outline and I knew where to put color. I just didn't plan on what color, but I really like what I ended up with. I think everything looks good so far. It's just, I become outdone, done in by the fact that I can't turn my paper when I go to make the outline of the eyes, which is coming up soon. As you can see, I'm putting away my Gamsol because it is toxic, and when you're not using it, you do want to put it away because you don't want to be breathing in the fumes. So here's where we err, in my opinion. I make the eyes way too small, coming up in a moment here, and then there's just nothing to be done. The white of the eyes is just so minuscule, and I used a cream color that ended up smearing, so the white of the eyes just, there's not enough of it. And when you have all pupil and no whites, the eyes look somewhat demonic. No matter what you do, you can't really fix that. So, which is unfortunate because I love doing eyes. Eyes are one of my favorite things to portray in my artwork, which is one of the reasons I like to do faces and do portraits, is because I like to do the eyes. So it's a little unfortunate that it turned out the way that it did, but as you can see, the colors are smooth and lovely. I'm using Prismacolor, and I've never used it on this watercolor paper. That's what I use when I do pastels. I've never used it on that before, but it worked very well. It was just creamy and smooth and did what it should do. Just the problem was there's not enough white of the eyes. So as you can see, I'm adding a little bit darker color at the top to throw in a little bit more shadow, because shadows are good. We like shadows. And defining the lips a little bit. And I end up going a darker pink, but in doing so, I accidentally make the bottom lip darker than the top lip, which I have to fix because the top lip gets less light than the bottom lip, so it's usually darker. And that's all part of that shadow business I've been talking about. So I had to define that, and I end up really liking it. But then I go over it with the black, as you'll see. I made my decision to outline the whole thing in black, and I kind of regret it. Because I lose a lot of this detail. Like right here, I'm getting some more detail on the shadowed area, and I really like it. I think it turned out well. And then I decided to stick with my original plan of outlining the whole thing in black. Some areas definitely needed it, but not all areas, even though I did go to all areas, which is just, I think was a little bit unfortunate. But it's just one of those things, because usually when I outline in black, I absolutely love it. I love the way it looks. This time, I think I just would have benefited with a little less outlining. But, like, the outlining in the flowers could have stayed. And I think my shot got moved because you can't see the top of the flowers anymore. So, yeah, this whole scenario just didn't turn out the way I wanted it to, the artwork or the video. But sometimes that happens, especially when you're working under pressure, when you know you're performing. You just don't perform as well as you could if you were just chilling on your own. And that's just part of the pressure of performance. In any avenue, it does affect your outwork. It does affect your output of your work. So, but overall, I think I did well enough to, we're almost done filling in the lovely swirls. I hope that you picked up some tips from this video, and I post videos every Friday at noon, so come on back, hit the like button, hit subscribe, all that jazz, and I will see you next time. Bye!